All right, there we go. What's going on, guys? Welcome back to another episode here on the Lazy Genius Tarot and Bazaar. My name is Alex, and if you're new here, thank you for making this your first stop on the journey. Today, we are actually going to be doing sort of a side-by-side walkthrough of the 1909 Art Restoration deck and the study deck for tarot course from Make Playing Cards. This one came from Drive-Through Cards. So today, like I said, we are going to be doing sort of a side-by-side walkthrough of the two, just as a initial point of reference for some of the comparison videos that I'm going to be having coming up. I'm going to be comparing, just to start, the 1909 against the original Rider-Waite tarot deck that was copywritten directly from the estate of A.E. Waite, and then also the Centennial as well. And then with the study deck, I'm gonna put that up first against the pre-copyright yellow box and the orange box AGM Tarot of A.E. Waite. So I've got a couple of them already planned out for that. If there's any other decks that you see in my collection at all that you would like to see one of these decks compared to, just let me know in the comments and I'll be sure to get around to doing that. But I do have a couple of comparisons with each one of them lined up. Today I am going to go ahead and flip through all of the cards. I'm not going to really take too much time on them unless I notice any, little details or whatever that might catch my eye. Because it is RWS, I just wanted to get a good quality flip through on my channel here of the two reference decks that I use for pretty much everything RWS. Again, the left is the 1909 Art Restoration and the right is the study deck. I really like both of them, actually. The 1909 is a historically restored copy of one of the 5 1909 Roses and Lilies tutor decks, and then they were scanned in for the cards, and this is a scan, I believe, of Kenji Itsumashu's Pam A. So yeah, let's go ahead and start flipping through the cards here, and both of them have the respective backs from each of the decks that they were scanned from. One thing I do notice is that on the Magician, on the 1909, there's more of a blotch on the face than on the study deck, but there is still a spot where it looks like there was a printing error on the cheek of the Magician on both decks there. I do notice right away that the study deck, the Pam A from 1910, which this is a scan of, is a little bit more red than the 1909. Colors are a little darker. Line work is a little thicker. I'm not going to say too much, but it is a little thicker. The skin hues so far are definitely a little bit more red in the study deck as well. Okay. There's the Lovers, and the eyes are closed on both of them. So the two decks essentially are the exact same artwork and almost the same coloring there. I've noticed that a lot of the hues seem to be deeper with the 1910 than in the 1909. But for the most part, they're pretty spot on. Um, I mean, the line work is a little bit thicker, maybe a tad more muddled on the 1910 than the 1909, but I'm excited about both of these, and I use them as my reference points, sort of, because I feel like this is probably the closest that I'll ever get to holding the deck from 1909 or the deck from 1910 in my hands. So I'm really excited about both of these decks. And like I said, I do use them as sort of a reference point for RWS. Now, what little bit I do know about the lineage of the original Pam decks, the starting with the 1909 Roses and Lilies, going all the way through the Pam B, which was the last release of the original Pam decks. I pretty much picked up all of that information from Melissa Zupan between watching her videos and talking with her in messages and stuff. I've picked up quite a bit of information about that. But just as sort of a quick rundown, the Roses and Lilies tutor deck, which was basically a soft release of the Pam A, came out in 1909 and of course had the Roses and Lilies back. And then, like I said, that was basically like a soft release of the Pam A. And that, as far as we know, there are 5 actual copies of that deck still remaining in existence. Quick side note, the Devil and the Lovers are inverted cards of each other. I don't know how many other people have ever noticed that, but these two cards are basically inverted versions of each other. If you notice, the flames on the tree behind the man in the Lovers card become the flames on his tail. The fruit on the tree behind the woman becomes the fruit on her tail. In the Devil card, they go from being free to in a sort of self-imposed bondage where the chains are loose enough for them to escape if they choose. The angel turns to the devil, and the brightness of day turns to the darkness of night. So they are literally inverted versions of each other. That's just a quick side note. Figured I'd throw that out there. Just something I had noticed. And then so far, I'm not really noticing too many differences in line work. I mean, the color is definitely a little bit brighter, more saturated, and a little redder in the Pam A than in the Roses and Lilies. Sorry about the dogs. Give me 1 second. All right, there we go. Sorry about the dogs. Where was I? Oh yeah, the 1910, the Pam A here, like I was saying, is a little bit more red, a little bit more saturated in color tone. But other than that, they're pretty much the exact same deck, which makes sense that the Roses and Lilies would have been a soft release of the Pam A. And then the Pam A would have been released in 1910. And then you sort of have a Pam A .2 that was released in 1915 that had a slightly thinner cardstock, as far as I understand it. And the way that you could tell the difference is one comes with a 1910 copywritten Key of the Tarot, and the 1915 Pam A deck comes with a 1911 copyright in the pictorial key. And then after that, another marker of the Pam A line work is all of the details that you see in the flags with the little squiggly line above the sun and the seeded detail in the sunflower underneath the flag there, um, is indicative of Pam A. So again, making sense that this would have been the soft release for this deck. And then after the Pam A in 1915 with its second release there, you have the Pam D, which gets released in 1920. They used the Pam A plates, but not all of the decks actually came out that great. You had a lot of blown out lines and stuff. The Pam D would have had the 1920 copyright to the Key to the Tarot as it was released in 1920. Now, as the Pam D was coming out, according to what I've gathered from the couple of sources that I've been able to track down information on, some of the Pam Ds did come with the Key to the Tarot there, some of the better versions of it. Melissa Zupan, I believe, has a Pam D actually, and you can catch walkthroughs and comparisons of an actual Pam D deck that would have come out between 1920 and 1931 on her channel, because she has done a few walkthroughs with it. So definitely look into checking her out for some good RWS or just tarot information in general. That woman is sort of like a walking tarot encyclopedia. It's kind of cool. And then after the Pam D, or while the Pam D was sort of finishing up production and they were scaling back on that because they didn't really come out that great, the Pam C came out. I'm not sure if the Pam C was using the same plates or line work as the Pam A, or if the line work itself changed with the Pam C. That is something I should probably look into. But I do know that, the Pam C was released in 1920 as well. And it was released sort of at the tail end of the Pam D. So I guess I should probably try to do a little bit more research on the Pam C and see what I can find. And then I know with the Pam B, which was the sort of final release of the original Pam decks, you do have a change in the line work. For instance, the eyes on the angel on the lover's card are open rather than closed. You lose the detail in the flag on the sun card, as well as the detail in the sunflower and the little so-called oh shit squiggle at the top of the sun there. So you do actually see differences in the line work with the Pam B for sure. And that would have come out in 1931. I think that ran for about 10, maybe 15 years. That is an estimate, I think, based on what I can remember of the research that I did there. Those numbers could be slightly off though. But yeah, so the Pam B would have come out in 1931. I do know that the current version of the Los Scarabeo wheat sheath box is a pretty spot on representation of the Pam B. But it would be really cool, I think, because there would have been 5 different editions or 5 different versions of the original Pam decks that would have been printed or would have come out back then. So you would have had the 1909, the Pam A 1910, the A2 from 1915. Well, technically 6 because the A and the A2. And then you would have the Pam D and the Pam C from 1920. And then you would have had the B from 1931. So yeah, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 total versions. So it'd be really cool, I think, to find a way to get all 6 versions into a restored and scanned version. of those decks so that we have sort of a historical representation of each one. Something just like with these two, but with all six versions of the original Pams. I think that would be pretty cool. Side note, and coming up in a future comparison, the guys that, or I should say, the gentleman, the one guy, C in London, I believe it's one person, actually also did a art restoration deck of the Grand Atea. So he did not just do this one. There's also the Grand Atea, which, like I said, will be coming up in another comparison in the near future. Um, so this, like I said, these two are my sort of starting reference for all things RWS. Because, like I said earlier, I think this is the closest I'll ever get to holding the 1909 or the 1910 in my hands. And you can see that with the 1909, while it was historically sort of retouched or, restored, so to speak, the restoration process still didn't like digitally fill in any of the lost color or whatever. So you do see cards where the images, you can see the aging on them, or you can see where colors have chipped, or so while it is historically restored, it still has a lot of the age in it that's visible. And the same thing with this one here. This one is a little bit more digitally retouched than this one. So as far as reproduction quality, I think this one probably takes the cake. This one is slightly more digitally retouched than this one. Um, this one is actually historically reproduced versus the digital uh, reproduction here with these scans. Both of them are amazing decks, though. Both of them are in my top 5 RWS decks. These are, like I said, my reference point. I definitely enjoy seeing the differences between the line work just on the two decks. Not necessarily differences as far as like differences in actual lines, but more like the thickness or the boldness of the lines based on what I can only assume is two different printing technologies. Or maybe they just refined the process. Because again, this was a soft release of this one. So maybe they just refined the process and got it a little bit more dialed in. I will say, because of the fact that in this one, the line work is a slight bit thicker, even possibly blown out in some cases. In comparison to this one, the details in this one are a little sharper. Um, Like, for instance, in this one, you lose a little detail in the face in comparison to the detail in the face that you get with the 1909. Um, Same thing here. A little bit of the detail in the back is... Sorry about that. I don't think my auntie realized that I was recording a video. Sorry about the interruption. Now, where was I? Oh, yeah, I was flipping through these, taking a peek. I think I was talking about the fact that because the line work here is a little bit thicker, a little bit more blown out in comparison to the line work here, the line work in the 1909 is a little bit more detailed than we see in the Pam A. But the line work is the same on both cards. It's just a little thicker or more muddled on the 1910, and it is very slight. Like it is not blown out entirely at all. It is still very detailed. You know, it's still an amazing quality picture, but just with the eye of an artist, this one is slightly more detailed than this one because of the quality of the line work, so to speak. Um, let's see here. Yeah, I love both of them. Like I said, both of them are in my top 5 tarot decks for just RWS specifically. Um, what I like is even in this one, where the line work is a little bit thicker, it's a little bit darker, you can still see all the same detail that you can see over here. You can still see his hand petting the dog. You can still see the detail in the banners and signs up here on the wall. So you don't really lose any detail for the most part, but it is definitely sharper in the 1909. Now, also with the 1909, you do notice that some of the cards have almost this worn, discolored look on them. But then some of them are still super bright, so you can tell that they didn't like fill in any of the color digitally with this one, which is something that I like. And then here's one of those cards where the detail can be tricky if the line work gets too thick. I think if you weren't necessarily looking for it, you might lose the rabbit here because of the saturation and color. But other than that being just like a trick of the eye because it is down there in the corner, I don't really see you losing too much detail. It is darker on the 1910. And then here's the final card in the deck. And this is just another one of those super highly detailed cards where if the line work is too thick, you start losing stuff. I like it though. I mean, while it is dark and the saturation of the colors kind of makes you lose some of the grapes in and around this area, you can still make out a lot of the detail. Lose a little bit of detail in the throne on this side, but for the most part, it's spot on. I love both of these decks though. But yeah, so that is the 1909 art restoration deck, and the Make Playing Cards study deck for tarot course. Just quick comparison of the card stocks there. The Make Playing Cards is the S30, and the drive-through cards is just their like standard smooth card stock. However, when you look at them, the Make Playing Cards cardstock is definitely thicker. I don't know if you guys can make that out. It's definitely thicker. Let's see if I can do this without messing nothing up. There we go. So as far as a difference in thickness, we're looking at that being 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 cards. There's a 12 card difference in the thickness between the Make Playing Cards study deck and the drive-through cards 1909 art restoration. They both shuffle real well. I do like the way that the 1909 shuffles better though, just because I'm a riffle shuffler. But both of them still shuffle amazingly well. Both of them are still amazing decks. This isn't necessarily a comparison to see which one of the two somebody would want to get more, but more of just a sort of walkthrough of my current reference point, kind of what I'm basing my reference for all things RWS on at the moment, and that is these two. So yeah, I thank you guys for coming to hang out with me again today, as you always do. And again, if you are new here, thank you for making this your first stop on the journey. I definitely appreciate you coming to spend some time with me and hang out while we talk tarot. Yeah, and hopefully I see you guys on the next one. Like I said, I appreciate you for stopping by. And yeah, don't forget to hit the like button and the subscribe button. And I'll see you on the next one.